It's the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm your Monday host, Bo Brack, hanging out with you. And look, the afternoon games did not disappoint, just like the early game did not. In the afternoon, it was the Browns seeking revenge for their divisional loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Could they pull that off? And also, how did Tua look in year two? And also, we were looking at the Green Bay Packers beginning their last dance season, but they looked more kind of like a different series, and it wasn't The Last Dance, which followed the Chicago Bulls. Let's take a look at the afternoon games. The Kansas City Chiefs, they did what they did in the divisional round. They beat the Browns, but it was another dramatic victory for the Chiefs. 33-29, Patrick Mahomes, 337 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, 197 yards to Tyreek Hill in one of those scores. Nick Chubb had 83 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground for the Browns, who fall to 0-1. Baker Mayfield had a crucial interception in that contest. Tua, 202 yards. He had a touchdown on the ground and a touchdown in the air, through an interception as well. The go-ahead score was to his former Alabama mate, Jalen Waddle. He had the go-ahead touchdown reception. The Patriots, they fall in Mac Jones' debut. McCorkle, 281 yards. He had the touchdown. Damian Harris had 100 yards, but that crucial fumble caused by Xavier Howard in that contest. It was defend 17, Pats 16. Broncos led by Teddy Bridgewater. They win 27-13. Teddy B, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon, 101 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Sterling Shepard in a loss, 113 yards and a score. Daniel Jones, 2 scores, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. And then it was the Saints, just a drubbing of the Packers, 38-3. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. Jameis Winston, 5 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers, 2 picks in the game. He did not finish the game. We saw Jordan Love's regular season debut for the Pack. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. 38-3. Even our next guest, Ross Jackson, of course, Locked On Saints. I don't think he saw this one coming. He took the Green Bay Packers in their last dance and turn it into the sequel to Save the Last Dance or something that resembled it. It was awful. It was terrible, Ross.
Yeah, it was a rough one. Hey, but I did pick the Arizona Cardinals to get their win against Tennessee, though. So, I showed some love.
That you did. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals taking out the Tennessee Titans was the bigger surprise of the early games. It was,
right, for sure.
Team that had been in the playoffs back-to-back seasons, high expectations, and the Cardinals came in and punched them in the mouth. And that's exactly what happened with the Saints. Facing all of this adversity, all the questions around Jameis Winston, what was the biggest surprise to you from the Saints' 38-3 win over the Green Bay Packers on Sunday?
Oh, for me, it was the efficiency of Jameis Winston and the way that he just fit right into the Sean Payton scheme. I mean, this Saints offense didn't change much about what it does in a usual basis. I mean, they completed 65% of their passes in this one. Jameis Winston did only threw 20 passes for 148 yards and then topped it off with 5 touchdowns in that game with only 1 target, more than 20 yards down the field. That was the huge 75-yard touchdown to Deontay Harris that just kept running, which is what Jameis Winston told the receivers during the preseason when they were working out together, is just don't stop running. I'll find you downfield. And on that play, he did it. But outside of that, this team was conservative. This team took what the defense gave them, and Jameis Winston did it all.
It was hilarious, actually, on the Sunday Night Football pregame. Drew Brees, of course, legendary Saints quarterback. You know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
He was joking that, maybe that big 75-yard touchdown strike was what the Saints offense was missing the last couple of years when he was the quarterback. It was funny to hear Brees poke fun at himself. But how true is that?
I mean, I think that it's a big piece that was missing. I mean, this offense was very much condensed over the last few seasons. These route breaks that you saw today that were happening 12, 15 yards down the field before, a post route began to develop or a deep out route began to develop. Those routes started to move closer to the line of scrimmage. Those breaks were happening 7, 8, 9 yards down from the line of scrimmage with Drew Brees over these past couple of seasons. And, there's no need to shade Drew Brees or anything like that. That offense was obviously fantastic and still was extremely efficient despite not being necessary to attack down the field. But now you have the ability to do it with Jameis Winston, and that's where you get those big plays, just like you saw to Deontay Harris.
Ross Jackson, of course, Locked On Saints. You can hear him tomorrow right here, the Locked On NFL podcast with Luke Braun. They'll be breaking down Monday Night Football, the results from that game, and make sure you're following along on Twitter at Ross Jackson NOLA. So, we can talk about the offense, but the defense was special today as well. They made the reigning MVP, Aaron Rodgers, look pretty pedestrian to below average, 2 interceptions. Why was this defense so successful on Sunday?
I don't know. This is probably the other biggest surprise here. And it's not that I was down on the defense, but this was a top 5 defense last year, both in passing and in rushing. So you expected to see some type of a drop off with the pieces that they lost over the course of the offseason. Although they did maintain a lot of veteran presence and great play at all 3 levels of the defense with some of the veterans that hung around. And of course, they maintained their defensive coordinator and Dennis Allen, potentially upgrade a little bit at the secondary coach going to Chris Richard. But you didn't have Ken Crawley in this game, who is now on injured reserve. The Saints traded for Bradley Roby, who's going to take over that second cornerback spot opposite Marshawn Lattimore. But he was suspended for the first game. So it all came down to rookie Paulson Adebo, who I was a little bit concerned about having to go up against a future Hall of Famer and last year's MVP and Aaron Rodgers. But the symbiotic relationship between the pass rush as well as that secondary were definitely there. 2 red zone takeaways definitely helps as well. The interception by Paulson Adebo and then the late fumble forced by Tano Passanio, former Kansas City Chiefs defensive lineman. I mean, they showed up at the right moments, and this was a defense that was ready to be tenacious and was very much ready for this game. We'll see if they can carry that tenacity moving forward throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, and moving forward, 2 weeks more on the road. Obviously, this was supposed to be their home opener, their season opener. How are you seeing how the team's holding up? Do you expect maybe, at least in those 2 road games, a letdown with all the adversity they're facing?
I could certainly see some fatigue at some point over those next 2 games. I mean, they've essentially been on the road since the end of August. Essentially, they were in Dallas for a little while. Now they're in Fort Worth. They're returning to Fort Worth after hosting this game in Jacksonville. They're going to go on the road to Carolina and then go on the road again to the East Coast, going up to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. Hopefully able to return home at the beginning of October as they host, quote unquote, we'll see what happens there, the New York Giants. But I can certainly see, especially if that Giants game ends up being a game in which the Saints end up having to play away from home and hosting at a neutral site again. That's a very tough defense in New York. That New England defense is getting a lot of getting a lot of pieces back as well. And Mac Jones is, igniting this new offense, if you will. But when it comes down to it, I could see a bit of fatigue set in over the course of the next couple of games. But hey, getting a big win when you maybe expected this team to lose here week 1 definitely gives you a little bit of extra leeway as well.
Great win for the Saints to open up the season. One not a lot of people saw coming. Ross Jackson, listen to him on a daily basis. Locked On Saints. Listen to tomorrow right here. Locked On NFL. To wrap up the Sunday slate, it was the Sunday night football game between the LA Rams hosting the Chicago Bears, and we got the much anticipated Justin Fields debut. It didn't look like I think anybody thought we were going to see from Justin Fields, but he did find the end zone. But the Bears fell enormously short of the Los Angeles Rams, who now are putting their faith behind the arm of Matthew Stafford. And there was a ton of hype this offseason surrounding Matthew Stafford. I bring on now from Locked On Rams, our guy Sosa Kremenjas, following the 34-14 win for Los Angeles. And Sosa, did Matthew Stafford, did he resemble any of the hype that he and the Rams got this entire offseason?
I think that's exactly what happened in this game. You see him come right out in that first drive, in that first series. First thing he does, play action, get under center, uncorks a 70-yard bomb for a touchdown, Van Jefferson. Of course, there was a little bit of luck there as well. Van Jefferson falls, nobody touches him, gets up, and kind of basically walks into the end zone. But, you're looking at this guy now who everyone expected to be very different from Jared Goff, not necessarily statistically or, when you look at the end of the year stats, the numbers, but the way the offense functions and what this allows Sean McVay to do. And I think that's exactly what we saw in this game. I mean, this was the first time a quarterback in his first game threw 250-plus yard touchdowns in a game since 1968. No surprise that he already has as many 50-yard touchdowns in one game as the Rams had as an offense all of last year. It's clearly a different offense, one that's going to push it vertically. They're looking for explosive plays. They made that a priority over the offseason. And it clearly has come to fruition one game into it. I think right now you can't ask for a better start, in this Stafford era.
Yeah. So is it fair to say, hey, where can they find room to improve? I mean, it's week 1, it's game 1 of the Matthew Stafford era in Los Angeles, coupled with Sean McVay. Where would you like to see them maybe kind of tighten things up?
Yeah, I think the offensive line was a little bit shaky there throughout some of those drives. I know, there was that first drive where they scored a touchdown pretty quickly, and it kind of got stale a little bit for there, in that second to third quarter for a little while. But the running game as well. I mean, they only had, I want to say, like 20 yards rushing up until that end of the third quarter when they started to finally kill that clock a little bit with the running game and started to get productive. But that's probably the number one concern, I would say, right now when you look at the offensive side of the ball. Can the offensive line create any holes up front? And can the running game start to get anything going? Because you're not going to want Matthew Stafford throwing the ball 45 times every single game. Of course, the Chicago Bears do have a solid front seven, but at the same time, you can't go three quarters with 20 yards rushing. That's not going to be a recipe success for the most part. So I think that's the one concern on the offensive side of the ball as of right now.
And there's certainly worse when you leave that game, when you finish watching, you were like, boy, they needed to really clean this up. It was a very impressive performance by Matthew Stafford, the offensive side of the football for the LA Rams, 34-14. They take out the Chicago Bears. Social Cremenges, of course, the host, Locked On Rams, writes for PFF. Follow him on Twitter at QB's MVP. Also, there are a couple guys on the defensive side that shine. Of course, you've got the best player pound for pound in football, and Aaron Donald, and then you've got Jalen Ramsey playing in the defensive secondary there. Who stood out in your opinion on the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, those were two of the names for sure. You look at Aaron Donald, he could have had 2 or 3, 4 sacks in this game, but for whatever reason, he just could not finish them. Andy Dalton was kind of squirming away every time there at the end. Jalen Ramsey, like you mentioned, very active. I'm not sure why the Bears went into this game targeting the best corner in football repeatedly, maybe, to get him emotionally or something, but the dude stepped up. He looked incredible, and a tough tackler, man. This guy is physical. He wants it, so he showed that very early, but one of the other players that maybe nobody expected to step up in this game and that maybe most fans don't even know who he is, Justin Hollins, the edge rusher for the Rams. I want to say he had 2 sacks in this game, was very active in run defense. A very good start for him. This is his first season starting with the Rams at the edge spot across from Leonard Floyd. And this is another guy that the Rams did not draft. They grabbed him off waivers last year, just prior to the season after those training camp preseason cutdowns. And now he's a guy that's starting for the team and is, showing out in 1 week throughout the season so far. So if the Rams can continue to get these kind of contributions from players that, maybe not anyone's really expecting anything out of, it's obviously going to go a long way to helping those superstars on that defensive side of the ball, the guys that we all know, the guys that we are all highlighting every game, the Donalds, the Ramseys, and guys like that.
I'm hosting the Arizona Cardinals podcast on a daily basis. It was just an incredible performance all day long by the NFC West teams. Maybe the Niners slipped up a little bit in the second half, but still they handled the Detroit Lions, and in Seattle, they took care of business in Indy against the Colts. And of course, the team I cover dominated a team that's made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, and the Tennessee Titans. I mean, the Rams may have had the most impressive performance of all of them, though.
They might have, yeah. Like you mentioned, this division it's ridiculous. I mean, you look at some other divisions around the league, NFC East, things like this, and then you go watch the NFC West, and I mean, it's absurd. This is a 4 playoff team division. I mean, these guys all deserve to go to the playoffs right now. You look across the division, like you mentioned, 49ers put up a 40 burger, and we're not even talking about them with an impressive performance. Of course, there was the meltdown there, but you look at the Cardinals, the guys that you guys cover, such an incredible performance. I mean, you're looking at Kyler Murray as one of the MVP favorites right now. You're looking at a guy like Chandler Jones coming back off of a season-ending injury, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. We're recording this after the Rams game. I think he just got another sack. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how right. good these guys are performing. And of course, the Seattle Seahawks as well. This division's crazy. It's incredible. I think it's going to be a dogfight all the way until the very end. And it makes it super fun to cover and fun to watch because I feel like, every week we're going to have a different choice for who might be the best team in the division. But as it stands right now, man, I don't think you can pick between these 4 teams.
Yeah, we all said it kind of on the NFC West Ultimate Division Preview, which you can find on wherever you listen to podcasts, and that this division might be so good that it could be a detriment in a sense to where they would cannibalize each other so much so that, getting a first-round bye might be out of the question because it's just going to be such a dogfight.
Yeah, and that's completely true. I know you look at some of these other teams that are, considered top teams in the NFC, the Packers, the Bucks, they have a lot more simple division games. Maybe not easy per se, not 6 easy games, but if you get 2 or 4 easy games, it's it's going to make it a lot easier to sew up some of those free wins and get to that first seed where, these NFC West teams, they do not have any of these luxuries. You're going to have 6 of the toughest games on your schedule just because of your division.
Sosha Kremenjas listened to on a daily basis. Locked On Rams is going to be an exciting team, one of the top teams in the NFC, if not in the entire NFL, to follow along with all season long at Locked On Rams. And, of course, read his work, PFF. Follow him on Twitter at QB's MVP. Thanks, Sosa.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.